Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back to another episode. I'm going to invite you today to participate in a very special conversation that I'm about to have with my dearest friend, former internet stranger, but we've become friends over the past few years, Dawn Gabriel. And it's funny because me and her were like seriously chatting it up before we pushed this button. And I'm like, Dawn, I'm just going to push record and maybe you can provide me some spiritual guidance or soul care for therapists. Because one of the things that Dawn does is really cool is she actually has a podcast herself and she supports other therapists. And the title of it is Soul Care for Therapists. Me and Dawn have known each other for what? How many years now, Dawn?
3, maybe?
Something like that. How did we meet, Dawn? You remember?
It was in a group, a mastermind group or something. We just met online in a group.
Internet strangers. Just never discount that somebody that you meet online could be a good friend. Because me and Dawn since then have done quite a few things together.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I've went on some of Dawn's retreats. She's came and led our team on a retreat, went to conferences,
hotel rooms.
We've even bunked up. But I'm really excited to have her on today, but because I think we're going to talk about something and we'll see where this conversation goes, that I think that if you are in pursuit of a calling, a goal, a vision you have, if there's something in your life that you are putting your energy, heart, soul, effort into, there will come a time where you may feel depleted. And if you've been listening to the past few episodes, there was an episode I did individually where I talked about when you need to know how to have seasons of rest, because I feel like that's where I'm in right now in my space in life. And so I just wanted to invite her to kind of talk a little bit about this, because I think as we're pursuing what we feel like we're being drawn to do, then sometimes we can hit these times or seasons where we're just like, I don't know what just happened, but I can't move.
Yeah.
So Dawn,
take it away.
Help me, Dawn.
Well, just as you were talking, I was like, this is fascinating because it seems to be a theme with me, with my leadership team, with just everyone right now. And it doesn't matter if you're a therapist or not. I think I work with a lot of leaders too. And it's like when you are really good at something you do, or you have a lot of passion and you're about to level up, or you just pour yourself into an event, there's a cost that we have to be aware of and that we have to get ahead of. And a lot of times we don't realize it until it's too late. And that's where burnout happens and or compassion fatigue. And as a leader or a therapist, even like a lot of times we're just so used to being in that role of giving and leading that we forget about ourselves and that we are allowed.
What you say?
That we're allowed to have a human side.
Raise your hand over there if you're listening, if that is you. Okay. Because I see y'all. I mean, I can't see y'all, but I see you. You agree.
Your heart sees you. Yeah. And so I think what happens is we forget to really holistically look at ourselves. And for me, I definitely, one of my favorite ways is tapping into the spiritual side, because I do feel like there's a deeper well to tap into when you look at spirituality. Regardless of what your religious beliefs are or your spiritual beliefs, I think we all are created with a spiritual soul. And I think we really need to figure that out and tap into that in order to help us build resiliency and to deeper purpose and meaning, kind of existential stuff, but real spiritual ways to tap into how we interact with these events and leadership.
Well, and Dawn, I'm glad that you're bringing this up because, like I said earlier, I have went to some of these events that Dawn has either put on or facilitated, and have also like been in the space with her, trying to get even direction for my own self when I'm making hard decisions. And I actually woke up this week, Dawn, and I actually thought about this. I'm like, why do I feel so disconnected right now in a very pivotal part of I just felt super connected, like I had this great event. It was amazing. We got a lot of community members to come out. My team was here. It was a phenomenal event. But the next few days I wanted to unplug, not respond to anything or anybody. And I remember waking up this week because I think I'm still on the recovery side of things from putting so much energy, effort, because it's not just the event, as you well know, it's the preparation for the event that, depending on what kind of event or thing, and it doesn't have to be an event, it can be like something in your life that you've been preparing for a really long time that actually comes into your life at a certain point. It could be a life transition where maybe you had a baby, or maybe your child is leaving the home, or maybe it's nothing to do about children. Maybe it's a loss of a relationship or whatever. But I remember leading up to this, it was like 6 months of like preparation, work. And it wasn't just the event itself, it was all the stuff that went behind the scenes, the thought processes, the decision making. And I just woke up after it and I'm like, I
Done.
could binge watch TV for the next week and be quite okay. But I also woke up and thought to myself, because I have a little bit of awareness from you helping me through this over the years. It's like, I'm like, you know what I'm missing? I need to get spiritually reconnected. And like you said, regardless of what your belief systems are around your spirituality or spiritual practices, I do believe, me personally, that there is a force a lot greater than us that is moving at all times throughout all things. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, people done been here, died, been here again, died, been here again, died. Like, there is like a lot of people that have been here before me. And number one, I'm not the only one. And number two, there has to be something that just I have to be able to reconnect into to be able to continue this journey, because I can't humanly do all the things on my own, even if I have an incredible team that's helping me.
Yeah. One phenomenon you were talking about that my spiritual director really helped me put into terms, and it helped me prepare for like the letdown after an event or a big thing, is imagine you're like a balloon and you're so fulfilled. When you blow a balloon up and it's full of air. And that's how we feel when we're doing a big event. Like, I just came off of a soul care retreat. It was probably the best one I've ever been on. And
Woo-hoo.
I know it was like 3
and y'all
days.
Went to the mountains. Tell people what you did, Dawn.
So we
Paint
have
a
this
picture of what these soul care retreats are, so people don't think we all in a circle going,
oh no,
kumbaya, my lord.
No.
Kumbaya. You know that song?
Yes, I do. It is kumbaya, but not. Yeah. So I have this awesome retreat center that we go to. It's a boutique retreat center. So there's only 22 rooms, 3 hot tubs. It's nestled in the woods near the mountains. So the setting is peaceful, but we do hiking. I actually brought in yoga and massage. So there's a lot of physical stuff involved.
Man, I missed out on that one.
I know. I know. I've perfected it after a few years. And then we do a lot of spiritual exercises together. There's a lot of alone time as well. And then a lot of good food and just connecting with one another. And so it was like, I loved it. But then, so you're blown up like a balloon. You're full of life, full of spirit, like you're connected with people, with God, with the nature and everything. And then you go back to real life. And so imagine the balloon deflates. You know what the balloon looks like when it deflates? Like it's the wrinkles.
Pitiful. It looks pitiful.
Yes. And that's
pitiful.
what we feel. But we're surprised by that because we think we should live at this full level of life all the time. And that's just not possible. It's not life.
Seriously, I think this is a good place to talk about it, because I do think sometimes we have the expectation of ourselves, or let's talk about something else. If people often see you being at that full inflated balloon state, then when you are deflated, they were like, what's wrong with you? And it's like,
yes,
I'm a human being. And
we don't give ourselves, number one, we don't give ourselves permission. And then we don't let others give us we need that deflating time, but also to notice what goes on internally is, oh, why am I failing now? What's happening? Now I'm depressed, because we're kind of like addicted to that balloon feel, the full balloon. And so then we make that our goal, like this feeling of fullness. And my spiritual director like actually challenged me. She's like, don't make that your goal, because that is fleeting. And she really challenged me to, again, go back to that spiritual connection with God as the goal, not this awesome feeling I have when I'm on these retreats. And so it's been really good for me to like process, but also just give myself more permission, more downtime, and plan it into my schedule when I have a huge event. And I almost forget every time. I'm like, I planned one day, and it took a week. It took over a week. I was snappy at my team, my poor family as well. I was snappy at them. And I'm like, I just need more downtime.
Dawn, were you also fluffing pillows? That's what I needed.
In the office?
That's an inside joke between me and Dawn.
I was like, yes. I actually stayed away from my office for 3 days so I could not do that.
But this is important, I think, to note, because, you know, we often want to live on the mountaintop, the inflated balloon, these incredible experiences or events that we kind of really push ourselves towards. I mean, when I really sit back and think about it, I'm like, man, these are things that I used to dream and maybe didn't even think were possible for my life. Like, if you would have asked me even 2 years ago, hey, Christy, you're going to have this open house or this third location, and this is what it's going to look like. And here's the people that are going to be here. Here's how it's going to feel. Here's all the work you're going to do before. Here's how the rooms are going to look. Like, I just would have been like, the lies you tell. Like, I just wouldn't have been able to envision it. But I think so often what the piece that we forget is that those are moments. It's not necessarily where we live. And if we're always focused on having that feeling, or even like being in that state of doing is what I've really been focused on this year. Like, so many times I'm very good at doing. Like, if there's a task, I can do it. Do I always want to do it? Do I want to do some of the tasks? No, but if I know it has to get done, it's going to get done. It's going to be done, dude, whatever. You know what I mean? But the being is just as much. And then sometimes, like, I guess what you're saying is scheduling the being to just be or to recharge. And I am notoriously terrible at this. Like, it won't fail. I'll plan a trip and then I'll be like, I'm going to be back to work tomorrow after that. And I'm going to get home at 11 o'clock at night and I'll wake up at like a little cheery self. I'm going to go to the gym and then go to work. You know what I mean? And then we're going to get it all done.
Yeah.
And then I wonder why I'm like binge watching from the time I get home at 5:30 till it's time to go to bed, because my brain is just like mushy mush.
Yeah. Well, even it's just funny because this past weekend I shut off from friends and everyone. I just stayed home with my family. But I had people like our friend Steph was worried about me because I wasn't responding. She called and was like, what's going on? I had like 3 friends, like 911 texting me. And I just like was like, you guys, I just had to completely shut off I'm like, I'm actually fine. I wasn't fine, but this is how I got fine. Like, I had to shut off and just let people know, like, no, I'm not going out with you this weekend. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not involved in that. Like, I said no to everything and everyone. And I kept my phone away and I just was with my family. I think when people are so used to having access to you, especially your personality, Christy, my personality, like, we're so used to being the cheerleader and like involved in everyone's life and there for everyone, that when we're not,
it's going to be great. There's rainbows outside. The sun is beautiful. Like, and we honestly do feel like that most days. Right. But
when we need a break, we got to listen to that. And we're so not used to it. So I think we just have to plan it more and realize it's okay. It's healthy. Like, regardless of religious belief, like if you look at the life of Jesus, even if you don't, whatever you believe about him, he was still a great teacher and leader. If you notice the rhythm of his life, he definitely had a huge miracle and then he'd go away and be by himself for like hours or a day. Like, he modeled that for us. You know what I mean? Like, he did huge things, miracles, healed people. I mean, a lot of people in leadership, we give so much, but we forget the aftermath is just as important in order to refuel and connect with our own spirituality.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's so true, because I was just thinking of this phrase that was going in my head. I must have been brushing my teeth this morning. And it's the weirdest things that pop up in my head. But I was thinking to myself, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Now, where that came from, where the great unknown, but what I was thinking about is what you're talking about, especially if you're listening and you're in a position of leadership, or even if you're in a position with where people rely on you,
Mhm.
depend on you, that you're responsible for. Sometimes we can forget that can take a lot of energy. It can take a lot of you. And I'm thinking as we're talking about this, I know you're referencing Jesus, and regardless of what your belief systems are, there is stories about this man named Jesus and this thing called the Bible. And he took time. He wasn't just like, okay, I fed the 1,000. Now I'm going over to the next 1,000 over here. You know what I mean? Like, I can't
Yeah.
remember all the stories, and
Yeah.
I'm not a Bible theologian. Okay. But there was these kind of stories in there where
Yeah.
he took breaks, but we just feel like somehow we being human have superhuman powers.
Yeah.
We
And
don't even need
our
rest.
culture does that, go from one event to the next, or like give, and they don't look, that's not a holistic view of what's healthy.
So Dawn, if people are listening, they're like, yes, y'all are speaking to me. I'm feeling how y'all have felt recently. What are the things that you kind of guide people to do to help them besides that, like intentional scheduling and prioritizing and saying no to the things in that time, whether it be 2 days, a week, whatever, as they're recharging? But like, what are some other ways that you found really help people reconnect to the spiritual side of
Yeah.
themselves?
Yeah. So one thing, and again, it's not just like one thing, one time, it's more learning to start to intentionally turn your heart towards the spiritual, if that makes sense. And
What? It's not one and done, Dawn. I was looking for the quick fix. You ain't got no magic pill for me?
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay. Boom.
It's more learning to like find a practice that works for you. And of course, yes, I'm like, I want my practice to be going on a retreat once a month. Well, that's just not going to work. I've had to learn to find smaller things, more doable things. Like for me, one of the easier ones was just taking a walk without headphones on, like just taking a walk and being mindful in nature. That's an easy one that everyone can do. Another one that is a little more spiritual as well is what I call the daily examine. Actually, it's not what I called it. It's a thing, the examine. And it's where you, like for 5 minutes at the end of the day, you take some deep breaths, you calm yourself, and you just notice, when did I notice I was spiritually engaged? Or for people with more of a God belief, like where did I notice God present in my day? And then asking, where did I notice him to be absent? Or where did I notice there wasn't spirituality in my day? And just get curious about that. So notice, when do I most experience spirituality and when do I not? And then take some time to think about that. And when do I feel better and when do I not? And like, maybe I can start doing more things where I feel connected spiritually, with which for me was walking, hiking, being in nature without my phone on. And so
Yeah.
that's one thing I say as a basic level.
Yeah. Well, and it's very basic, but it's something I need to reintegrate into my life because you know how
Mhm.
there's seasons, Don, where you do practices really well and then
Oh yeah.
put them on the back burner. But I know for me, one of that is walking as
Hmm.
well. But I also think another one for me is to be able to journal, is to just be able
Yes.
to write, kind of like it's like my letter. I call it letter to God or letter to, again, I say God because that's what I believe in. But it'll just be a letter to God, like, here's what I'm struggling with, or here's how I notice. But I really love this concept of like the daily examine of like, when did you notice these
Hmm.
areas in these periods of your day where you felt God or whatever it is that your spirituality is or belief system is? When did you notice that within your day? When did you notice? For me, it's like moments of serendipity or just things aligned in a way
Hmm.
that you can't explain. Or maybe it's those times where you just happen. I'm telling you, it's like the serendipitous stuff for me, like our divine intervention, if that's what also you want to
Yeah.
call it, where you just run into that one person and they say that thing to you that uplifts your day, or you go do something for somebody else. And it really just is what they need in that time and they acknowledge that. So, but so often we're running through life, we don't realize it.
Yeah. And I would say the third question I usually have people ask it's not my daily examine. This is ancient. It's an ancient practice. The third question is, when did you notice God, but it wasn't so obvious? And that question usually
Ooh.
gets people, because then they start to realize, wait a minute, I actually, like, after you practice this for a while, you start to realize, oh, I am seeing spirituality in a lot more things than I used to, because you're open to it and your figurative vision is different. And so you're able to experience more spirituality, more God. Like, for example, us having this podcast, we didn't plan on what we were talking about today. And we both needed to talk about this. To me, that's a not so obvious, but God moment that we needed to connect, because I believe another big thing for spirituality is community. I feel like we are created to be in community. That doesn't mean we don't need alone time, but we heal in community, and we need to talk with people about what we're really dealing with and our struggles. And that is how we don't feel alone. And that's how we heal. And I feel like it was a God that we needed this podcast today for both of us.
We needed this today. And we scheduled it like probably
months ago.
over a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. And it's those timing and things. And I was just thinking, I actually listened to something earlier today as I was driving. And one of the things that this girl was saying on this other podcast that I was listening to, I reference like other podcasts all the time, but it does help me. It helps me like reshift my thought processes. But she was just talking about how there was this she did the artist way where she did kind of like the journaling every morning and reflection and creativity. It's this kind of journaling prompt, I guess, what you could call it if you've never heard of it. And she said, I just got to the place where I just practice so much of, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And if it doesn't, it wasn't my journey, and it was supposed to be somebody else's. And I'm referencing this because it stood out to me, because so often there may be a focus on an outcome, like whether the outcome is the feeling or the outcome is how we want something to go.
Yeah.
And I think just like those daily examining questions where we're trying to look for just inklings or whispers or moments where you can see like a divine force that's connecting and weaving through everything. I think part of that is helping you also examine when there's things that you need to let go of because it didn't happen for whatever reason, you know, and that mindset can really help you move through disappointment or things that didn't go the way you expected, or maybe you felt a certain way and you've expected to feel differently, you know?
Honestly, that's how I open my retreat. On the first night, we do a letting go, a releasing exercise so that we can receive what's meant to be. And so we do this letting go, and letting go I think that's a spiritual exercise, a practice of what do I need to let go of? Because when you're all full and filled up, like, it doesn't mean it's good filled up. Like, we can be filled up with a bunch of things, but we can't receive anything. And so we have to let go of some of these areas so that we can receive more blessing, more, I don't know, more deep stuff, whatever.
Inspiration.
Inspiration. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I can't be creative when I'm stressed. I can't have a creative space when I'm full in a negative way.
No, because you're focused on problems. You know, when you are typically stressed, you are not walking around in an abundance mindset, willing to be open to receive whatever comes your way.
Yeah.
In fact, you're normally closed. I'd call it. I'm just going to make this up as we go along, okay, folks. This is not something we pre-thought about, but this is how I envision it. Is when we are stressed, we are walking around in this closed, rigid state, you know, where we're like looking around at people, and there could be things that are being sent to us that could be received by us, but we're so closed because we're so focused on these different areas that are challenging and stressful for us. And stress is not always a bad thing, but you're right, it does limit us from sometimes receiving if we're so close. And the only way to receive, as you and I both know, and listen, this is like, I suck at receiving sometimes. I'm just going to let you know, I am a helper. I can give, but I am really terrible at receiving. So if you are feeling anything by what I'm saying, just know I see you. Okay. I need to practice on this. But when you're more open and you're letting go of these things that are not, whether it be serving you, or it could be, like you said, it could be not bad things that you're letting go of. It could be
Yeah.
good things, that I just need to let go. I need to let go of this good thing, because guess what? If I let go of this good thing, there might be this great thing waiting over here.
Yeah.
But if I'm still holding on to the good, I'll never be open to receiving the great.
Yeah.
So I do think it's, how do we learn to live life more open and more present and more with connected? But you have to be able to be aware of when you need to connect to something bigger than you.
Yeah, I think it's funny because the last few years where I've been like, marketing soul care for therapists and retreat, it's so hard to put into words. And it's not an easy sell, if you want to use that word, of, hey, let's do this so we can slow down, so we can be mindful. It sounds like weird. Like, people don't usually respond to that. So I'm like, I can't do the marketing thing anymore. It just has to be, like, again, in my word,
divine.
Yeah, it has to be spirit led, because I'm
divine
like,
divine marketing.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, please send out my calling card to all these people. No, but it is true, Dawn, because I think about this, right? Because if you were to do a 5 ways to make $1 million in revenue next year for a business,
it'd fly
right?
off the shelves. Yeah.
5 ways. People would be like, knock, knock. Excuse me, can I come to this retreat? How much money you want? I will pay you this, But if you're like, hey, I would like to invite you to come to some time where you are going to disconnect
and slow down
the world around you. You're going to slow down and you're going to reconnect to yourself and the spiritual side of things. Please welcome. And everybody's like,
well, I tell you what, every retreat, I have to talk people off the ledge from canceling, because they don't feel like they can make the time to do it. They've signed up, they paid for all the money. Even this retreat, I had to talk with someone, and I was like, just get on the phone with me. Like, if she doesn't want to come, that's fine. But as I sit with them, in my head, I'm like, you definitely need this retreat. And so a lot of it is helping them understand it's okay to slow down. It's going to actually be better for you. It's going to help you.
And this is so true. And y'all listen, I don't know how many it's been, but I know that I've at least went to one retreat Dawn did where she cued some deer for me while I was sitting in the woods by myself. It was snowing in Colorado. It was beautiful. And she must have just been on the other side being like, send the team of deer out to Christy. She needs a spiritual moment, right? And they just all came. I really know it wasn't you, Dawn, but it was incredible. But you're right. For people that are so focused on, like we're talking about me, the doing and not the being seems non-productive.
Yeah.
It seems like
the opposite.
How productive is sitting and like connecting and eating and getting a massage and whatever. But the reality is, it is almost like the most unproductive thing you can do to give you the space you need to be re-energized, refueled, reconnected, reinvigorated, restored. I mean, we can do all the re words, okay? A lot of words. But it just seems it's so counterculture, because our culture puts so much emphasis on the doing, and it's hard to just do the being part.
So true. Really. So true.
Well, and Dawn, before I ever moved back home, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I call it the 2 bracelets story. And I don't think I've actually ever told it here, but I remember this is going to be really funny. I was going on a women's retreat. I didn't even think about this part of it. I was going to a women's retreat in Arkansas. I had made the decision that I thought I wanted to move back to my hometown to start a counseling practice. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I just had this vision and this calling spiritually. I really feel like it came from me, from spiritual calling. And I remember we went into this, and this is a God moment, I really think. Well, we went into this like little boutique store, okay, in nowhere, Arkansas. I don't even know where we was at, but it was in the middle of nowhere, okay? So if you live in Arkansas, you know them nowhere place I'm talking about. And there was this little boutique store, and she sold like gifts and things. And I remember, I am a thrifter by nature. My mom taught me how to like shop off of the, what's it called? The sale rack, essentially.
Yes,
like if it's
clearance,
reduced or it's on sale, the clearance. Yeah. I just feel compelled sometimes to buy things just because they're on clearance.
Same, girl, same.
That's how it's taught. And I'm like, Christy, you don't really need that, even if it's on clearance.
But it's only $5.
It's only this little bit of money. And I remember I was on a very small budget for this retreat. I had no sense going on this retreat because I'm about to I wasn't doing very well that year, and I was about to liquidate any savings to move back home. Okay. So I didn't even be buying no tchotchkes or anything like that. And I found these 2 bracelets that are these things called mantra bands. I don't know if you've ever had them, but they have a word on them. It's one of those things that has a word and then it has a little meaning on this card about what the word means. Okay. And it's crazy because a few years now, this is totally a divine spiritual thing. A mentor of mine had gotten me a mantra band that said believe. Okay. And I really think that mantra band encouraged me. I used to say God speaks to me through fortune cookies, but I also think he speaks to me through mantra bands. Okay. And so the believe one really helped me cultivate this belief, I think, in the years following that of myself and then of also what I was being called to do. But these ones that I found, I'm like in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, there's these 2 mantra bands that are on the clearance section. And I was very confused about them because one of them said, just run. Okay, just run. And the other one said, be still. Okay.
Whoa.
And I really wish I would have had the definitions for you right now, what they said, because it was very powerful. And it really was more of the run towards your goals, but then also take time to be still. And I walked away from him and I'm like, I'm not going to buy those things. There is no need for me to buy those things. But I just kept on feeling the calling of Christy, you need to get those bracelets. And let me tell you something. I wore those bracelets probably for the first 2 years of starting a business. And there was a lot of challenges, a lot of things. And there were seasons where I had to just run. And then there was this thing called COVID where I had to be still. And so I think about those bracelets all the time because I think they summarize a lot about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that there are seasons where you will be running, but it's just as important to be still so that you can reconnect to the spiritual side of things. And why am I doing this anyways?
Yeah. You need to go get those bracelets again. Where are they?
They're in my jewelry box somewhere. Mm-hmm.
You got to wear them because you forgot the be still. Yeah. I think you're good at the just running.
I know. And you know what? During COVID, I'll be honest with you, that was a season where there was still running, but there was a lot of stillness, right? Because
you
couldn't go nowhere. You had to be still. And I think, even though a lot of people were climbing out of their skin when they couldn't go anywhere, I think one of the things it taught us is that, it did teach us we need community and people because, the disconnection from people was really hard. But I do think it also gave some credit that hey, you can slow down and the world does keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And there can be sweet moments in that stillness. I remember when COVID was kind of lifted and you could go back to everything and all the sports and all the activities were back on. I just remember feeling so overwhelmed, being like, can I pretend we have COVID right now so we don't have to go? And it was oh my gosh, wait, no, it's your responsibility to say no, Dawn. You can't blame it on COVID. And I realized, this was a good excuse for me. But guess what? We're adults and we can say no and put our own boundaries down and back off if we need to. So
yeah. And it's so hard, but I think about this sometimes and I'm glad, again, I think this conversation is really not for you listeners. It's for me and Dawn. Okay. Friends chitty chatting over here today. But I do think, as I'm reflecting on this, that, our life, this is what's so crazy, is life can be how you choose to live it. Mm-hmm. Now, especially if you're in the realm of my voice and you live in a first world country. Now, I'm not saying that if you lived in a place that you didn't have any access to opportunities or I'm not even saying that there are people that live in America where we live that don't have those access. I'm greatly aware. But the reality is you can live life however you want to live. I saw an encampment the other day on the river where people was living off the river, Yeah. And they can live that life. Who says? So I often also, when I'm thinking about the spiritual, I have to really check into myself to say, who says things have to be this way?
Mhm.
And ultimately, if I have a belief, especially my spiritual belief, that I will be in communion with the divine at some point, if I am so fortunate and honored and, lucky to be, that this ain't going to matter tomorrow, anyways. Like,
Yeah.
that is the truth. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what I do and what I put out into the world and how I show up, that does matter. But there will be one day in the very, 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 very distant future. I hope it's a very long future that people's going to be like, Christy, who? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if I'm living because I feel like this other person says I should do this or should show up to all these soccer games,
Yeah.
I
And
know we do it for the kids, but you know what I'm saying, Dawn? We do it for the
right.
kids.
Sometimes you got to say no. And you know what, Christy, if your listeners want to go on my website, I have a daily examine sheet they can print off. So it helps remind them the 3 questions and the daily
Well, tell them
examine.
where to find it, Dawn. I know
Oh,
we're going
yeah.
to link it up in the show notes, but
Yeah. soulcarefortherapist.com. And it's under resources.
And you don't have to be a therapist.
You don't. The resources are for anyone. So yeah, it has the daily examine right there, free.
And honestly, again, even if you're not a therapist and you're like, hey, I really need to find ways to reconnect to my spirituality, the spiritual side of me, definitely check out Dawn's podcast, Soul Care for Therapists. And again, even if you're not a therapist, it's going to help you really kind of ground in. And I'll be honest with you, even earlier, I say earlier this year, Christy, it was last year, but towards the end of last year, I remember Dawn got me connected with somebody who did some spiritual direction with me and held the space for me as I was struggling and just wrestling with some big decisions that I really wanted to make sure that I felt peace about the decision I was making, which it is ironic again, Dawn, that we're talking about this right now, because that decision was to do this third office because it was going to be a big leap of faith for me to do this. It was a little bit scary. And I remember I didn't want to make a decision based off of what I thought should happen, of what I wanted. I really wanted to make sure that I had peace and that I felt that I was being directed and called to make the decision.
Yeah.
And, there is a peace, and I'm glad I'm being reminded of this, and I don't want to get emotional about it, but there's a peace in knowing that when you make a decision, it's bigger than you and that you have a peace about that. And it's not like you just making this decision. You're making it with something that you feel is a lot more powerful than you, because then you can walk through it. And it doesn't mean the walking through it, that decision and taking that step of faith is not hard, but you can always go back to that moment to say, like, no, I know that I heard clearly. And no matter what the outcome, I know this was the choice that I was supposed to make. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I'm going to stop talking about it because I'm going to get emotional.
I know. I love that.
Right
No, I love that. That's that's beautiful because it's saying it's connecting into something bigger than you. That's beautiful.
Yeah. But if we don't take time to connect, then sometimes I'm not saying that everything that I really do have this belief system that like whatever happens is supposed to be, but when we try to make decisions so quickly where we're not allowing ourselves to give that space, that rest, that reconnection with whatever our belief is, then it really can put us in a very fearful and anxious place that can be very hard for us to move through.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dawn, I have one question for you because me and you can talk for all hours.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's going to be a 5-hour podcast. But we've got things to go do, people to see, lives to impact, souls to give care to. But I am curious if you were to go back to younger you. I ask this to everybody, and I don't care what age it is, Dawn, because I know you a young spring chicken, so it ain't that many more years you can go back. But if you were to go back to younger you and give yourself just a word of encouragement, a piece of advice, what do you think is one thing you'd say to yourself?
Ooh, that's a good one. And first of all, thank you for calling me spring chicken. I am not a spring chicken.
Yes, you are spring chicken. Chickens around here.
I'm turning 50 this year, Christy.
No way, Dawn.
Yes.
Serious?
Yes.
Stop.
Anyway.
You only halfway through, girl. Halfway point.
What would I say? I would say don't overthink so much. Like just trust in the process and stop overthinking and judging yourself so much. I have to wrestle with my brain and connect more to God and what he thinks of you, not all these negative beliefs you have about yourself.
Gosh, preach, Dawn. If we could all just stop overthinking everything, just, stop overthinking and reconnect. I mean, because then it's just more of you walking through what you have is more of a feeling or a gut or an intuition versus like a, over thought out process. But anyways, so that's what hopefully y'all take with y'all today. So listen, I got to let my friend Dawn go. But before you go, Dawn, I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you. Number one, because you have been such a good friend to me over the past few years. I don't want to get emotional again. Gosh, dang it. But, I just can't imagine you not being in my life over the past few years, even though you live in a whole nother state away.
Yeah.
I've seen you on like these calls that we've had for different things and had these also shared experiences with you that I just can't imagine not having you in. So I want to appreciate you for all who you are and all that you do for others, because I know you do a lot and you love a lot of people and you try to help us all reconnect to something bigger than us. So I just want to appreciate you for who you are, because I love you, Dawn.
Oh, thank you, Christy. No, I feel very similar to you. Like when we were just doing this podcast, I'm like, I'm so glad Christy's in my life. Like I just enjoy you so much. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad it's a reciprocal relationship. Because that would really suck if it was one-sided.
I could not do my group practice, I think, without you. That you've been impactful on a big level. So thank you.
Same, friend, same. So if you're listening, y'all know I give y'all one takeaway that I want you to just think about. And I think this is what I'm taking with me today, but I really hope that you take this. I just want you to do that examine in your life and ask yourself, where have I seen the presence of God or spirituality in whatever your belief system is in my daily life? And I hope you just acknowledge that, guess what? We're not alone in this, and we're all in this together. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.